Hi everyone and welcome to your daily horoscope and tarot reading. Today we have a really powerful and active sky where it is the moon who is making some really significant and important celestial conversations because the Silver Queen, as they call her in alchemy, is finally joining Jupiter and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. And since the moon and Jupiter and Pluto as a bunch are squaring the sun in Aries, now this is the energy of revolution. But first of all, this revolution has to take place on a soul level where our external reality, as in Capricorn, as in all the rules and regulations that govern our physical lives, are challenging our personalities, are challenging who we are on a deep instinctual core level. They are challenging our own set of rules, how we would like to live life, how we would like to experience life, or better said, what life means to us personally. Now, these last couple of days, this square was ongoing, so this energy was really intense, and it led many people into depression, into rebelling against themselves, rebelling against everyone and everything that took away their power, their liberty, their freedom, and mostly this played out on their personal relationships with other people, and for some, of course, purely themselves, because this is a very, very powerful wake up call to see what you're doing with your power, to see what you're doing with your life, to see if you're living your truth, if you're living what your heart truly desires, if you're living what you came here to do for, as in from a karmic perspective and spiritual perspective, but it can also represent a perfectly human perspective because some people are really skilled and talented at something and are really passionate about it, as in Capricorn, the midheaven, our life path. But society and the way things used to play out until very recently just didn't allow them to do what they are good at, as in the gatekeepers, as in the bureaucracy, as in everything social, legal that represented severe challenges and obstacles. So today, because the moon joins Pluto and Jupiter, we are feeling this on a deep soul level, and because we are feeling it from the soul, from our emotional worlds, from our more divine representation of who we are, well, chances are today, and starting from today, better said, we have no choice but to take action. We have no choice but to accept and embody the truth and decide for ourselves, individually, personally, what all of this means for us and what we're going to do next. And of course, this is also the moment when the Saturn and Uranus square invites us to try our very best and foresee, calculate, anticipate how all of these events are going to affect our futures, our hopes and dreams for the future, the lives which we would like to live in the very close future, so to speak. So this is a moment of big confrontation where it's not just our intellect, it's not just our emotional worlds, it's not just our instincts that are confronted with the truth, especially with the limitations, but also the soul. And when the soul is involved in any equation, well, then that means action, that means power, that means that the divine is also more present than ever in all of this. And you can see this playing out on the world stage because people in various different parts of the world are already starting to rebel against the rules. Now, in order to better understand what exactly is going on in the world from various different perspectives, I think instead of using astrology language, I should use my own personal example, my own story, because I have lived through this when I was a child. And having lived through that gives me the experience needed to somehow intuitively and instinctually just know what to expect and what exactly is going on in the world. So if you would like, please listen to my story. Now, astrology is based on cycles, and those cycles always succeed each other, and even though their manifestations are very, very different because they have to reflect the era, the present moment, the way the cycles and the main karmic theme of the cycles are pretty much the same. So, a moment just like this has been played out in my personal life when I was a child, more specifically in 23rd December 1989, when there was a huge revolution in my country, when the communist regime ended, when people took to the streets and they rejected the rules and regulations, the customs, the traditions, the legal systems, the political systems, as in everything that ruled the normality of life in that present moment, and then all of a sudden something new took its place. Now the sky wasn't exactly configured as in the present moment, but even at that time there was a huge cluster of planets in Capricorn, including the ruler of Capricorn, Saturn, and as you know, we had that moment, the big conjunction of Saturn and Pluto on the 12th of January 2020, and that was the moment which just detonated this Capricorn bomb, the energy of Capricorn, the big change. In 1989, Saturn was also present in Capricorn with the Sun, with Mercury, and Uranus was there, and all of them were opposing Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, its exalted sign, which means the truth of the people, which means Jupiter gave all its energy and blessing to the people, to the collective, to the families, to the decentralized power, so to speak. And the result was inevitable. But there's also a big karmic theme to all of this. So yes, the revolution made so much sense from every single perspective, because we had to catch up with the rest of the world. But what did that revolution, what did that moment of big change represent? Because external people, so to speak, who weren't living here, can see this as, well, just a revolution. They took down the Communist Party and stuff like that. But for us, it wasn't like that. We didn't live it through as simply as that. For us, it was a really shocking moment, because one day you lived one life, one normality, and the next day the whole world, everything that you knew, everything that was known by you until that present moment didn't exist anymore. So what do you do when you step into a world which was just created in that very moment in time? How do you adapt? What is your normality? What are your future hopes and dreams? How do you reconfigure yourself? How do you adapt to the big change? So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all, because you just didn't know what tomorrow brings, because there wasn't a tomorrow anymore. There was a tomorrow, but it was unknown and so uncertain that your mind, your heart, nothing could actually make sense of it. So it was quite, yes, liberating, but also extremely traumatic, especially for me as a child. And I can still remember that all throughout that year, 1989, when you walked the street, before the revolution began, when you were outside, you could just feel a certain wind of change. You could feel the change, the end, the big twist of events in the air. You couldn't put your finger on it, but deep down your soul, the souls of people, the souls of masses, individually, without even communicating with each other, because back then not only did we not have the internet, but communication was banned, it was forbidden, censorship, total censorship. You weren't even allowed to be on the streets after 10 o'clock in the evening. There wasn't no excuse, you were arrested simply. You had no rights whatsoever. You couldn't buy food. There wasn't any food to buy. You didn't have markets, you didn't have anything. The regime just gave you your portion, regardless of what it was, and that was it. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is even before that moment took place, you could feel it. You could feel it 3, 4, even 5 months before. You just knew that something it was gonna happen. And some people just trusted their intuition, their feeling that yes, this is something that's going to become very real, even though we don't know how or why, because at that before the revolution took place, the Communist Party was an unstoppable power. No one even dreamed of challenging them because that meant instant death there and then. There wasn't any means to escape it. But people still felt it. Even me as a child, I felt it clearly. It was like a whisper in the wind telling us that, well, change is here. And in the present moment, all of us are feeling the same vibes, the same intuitive perceptions, the same gut feeling. Our instincts are screaming at us, change is here. Just that for those people who haven't lived through anything like this, it's difficult, just like it was difficult for us at the time when we first lived through this. But of course, there is a big karmic side to all of this, because basically what is going on is we are, as a human collective, as collective consciousness, as what humanity is, if we look at it as multiple interconnected, interlinked individuals forming one big organism, it has traumas. Human collective is purging itself from traumas. And what are those traumas? Well, what does reality reflect to us? It reflects that human collective abused their freedom, abused their scientific knowledge, abused their technology to benefit a couple of different very influential people, and the rest of us were left in the dark. So it's basically socialism, but in a twisted and concealed and hypocritic way of going about it. Because how do you stop the power of the people? By lying to them, by pacifying them, by making them passive, by making them be happy in their own misery, by twisting their minds and programming that certain passive happiness into them through education. Well, just having a job is enough to be happy. Being a highly respected professional gives you all the reasons to be happy and proud of yourself. There you accomplished your soul's purpose by just working, by just becoming the professional and sacrificing everything for that purpose. Especially when you make the sacrifice, selling your time, selling your life, giving away freely precious moments of your life, to be seen as something really positive and encouraging. So this is the illusion that becomes so obvious to us right now. Now our lives are limited. We are finite material beings in the form that we take right now, and that means that our time is limited. So what do we do with our time? Is that actually part of the soul mission, to give it away freely and to sacrifice it for material resources, which cannot always give us the opportunity to learn what we came here to learn? And you might say, well, this is free will, this is free choice, everyone chose their path free willingly. But if this is part of education, if this is part of a greater manipulation, because if you control how society should work and look like, and how everyone's individual preferences should be like, when you define normality for them and don't give them the means to find alternate means to escape that normality, if someone so wishes, well, then that is already an aggression, that is already an abuse, regardless if you do it with your advanced knowledge of psychology, knowing how to program the subconscious of masses of people, or if you do it by lying and deceiving them. It doesn't really matter. But at the same time, even this isn't bad karma that much, because there's always a little window of opportunity for everyone to awaken, to everyone to rebel against this. So you can only be manipulated. It is perfectly true that you can only be manipulated if you allow it to a certain extent, but there's other implications which are extremely bad karma, because when collective normality and what you do to people drives some innocent souls who are full of love and passion, who really want to embody something pure-heartedly, and you drive them to suicide, now that is extremely bad karma, and that karma is repaid by all of us collectively, because we are responsible for this. We are our ancestors. Our genes are our ancestors. So that means this is our responsibility. Someone has to pay for all those people who died. It doesn't matter if it was suicide. It doesn't matter if our collective normality ruined their earthly experiences for them. It doesn't even matter if it was wars masked as high principles and humanitarianism saving deprived people, when in truth it was commercial or trade purposes, and all of this was concealed and hidden. Everything is collective bad karma, and we have to pay for that. So it isn't punishment, it isn't divine punishment, don't get me wrong. No one wants to punish us, because if something would have wanted to punish us, we'd be extinct by now. We wouldn't have the smallest chance. It doesn't matter how sophisticated and evolved we are, because if the planet wants us gone, we're gone. There's no question about this. So this is basically, every action has a reaction. So the moment when we took action, but our actions were just as twisted as the old paradigm that we shifted, well then we have built our futures back then, when the big change took place, on the same corrupted foundations. And all of that, all of our history, everything has led us to this present moment. And if anything, this global crisis, this coronavirus, this profound change of our value systems is not a punishment, but an opportunity to save ourselves, an opportunity to return to innocence, an opportunity to match our morality, our spirituality, our humanitarianism to our technological levels. This is where it is totally unfair for some people to possess the power of science and not disclose what they did with that power, and the rest of us to share the same planet with them and not have a saying in it whatsoever. Because separation, not wanting to be part of that, should be an option, so to speak. So this is where, when we don't have any option or any saying in this whatsoever, is what highlights the big truth that the stars, that the dance of Saturn and Pluto on 12th of January wanted to reveal to us. How much of your freedom is true? How much of your freedom is an illusion? Because I can tell you the philosophy that as long as your mind and thoughts are free, you are free, absolutely and totally. Yes, that is perfectly true, but if your thoughts are also polluted 24/7 by external reality and you have no choice but to take the information, the fake news, the conspiracies, the fear in, when you have no choice, well then you're not free. None of us are really free. Freedom is, at this point in time, is only an illusion. So what do? Do we adapt the spiritual philosophy of the Buddhist monks and just detach from everything, just rip ourselves away from the collective and resort to desperate spiritual measures where we, instead of wanting enlightenment, seeking that level of enlightenment, that level of spiritual evolution through our own individual means if we have to give it up and just adapt the extreme measures where we use our meditation, the power we have over our beings to forcefully silence our minds, even when this is not for everyone. Not every single living soul or not every person on a spiritual path is compatible with this. Yet, if they still have to choose this just not to go insane, well, then this is also a spiritual warfare, isn't it? Because you cannot be free, not even as in spirit, as long as you're incarnated here, and that's a big aggression. And all of this should be taken into consideration because the truth has very many different sides to it. Now, I know that I shouldn't have said all of this. I know that I shouldn't have expressed my truth. I know I shouldn't have spoken out. But this is my personal act of rebellion. Now, for the tarot reading, as you can just see, the cards, almost everything is fire energy. The Ace of Wands is the epitome of fire. The Sun is a luminary body, as in fire. The Six of Wands is fire energy. The Knight of Wands is fire energy. And the Ace of Swords, yes, it is air, but if we look at it as electric discharge lightning, which is produced by air and gas, well, then that is also fire. So this means that the inner fire, the sparks of passion, are suddenly being ignited in all of us. This is when a static way of embodying peace is no longer an option. Now, the Ace of Wands represents the awakening of our instincts. The Sun card reversed is also very suggestive because it represents the actual Sun traversing the sign of Aries, which is fire and our primordial instincts. And the Six of Wands reversed is the card of triumph and victory reversed, representing that we still have a lot of work to do until we obtain victory. But the combination of these cards basically tell the story that our happiness, our future hopes and dreams, our passions, our ambitions, even our connections with our own souls are threatened already by the cumulus of everything that's going on in the world. And this forces us to think, this forces us to reflect, and ultimately, as the combination of these cards suggests, it's going to be our instinct, it's going to be our fire, inner fires, our passions, our warrior spirit, so to speak, regardless from which perspective we look at it: spiritual warrior, actual physical warrior, intellectual warrior, philosopher, whatever. That is the predominant force that is awakening inside of us, and we are reaching a moment when there is no choice, there is no control over. This is where the fear energy cannot influence us that much more in a limiting way, because we have nothing to fear anymore. Our worst fears have come into existence before our very eyes. So this is the moment when fear is illogical. It doesn't matter what conspiracies or what different theories you believe, you cannot fear them anymore, regardless of how good and bad the situation looks from your own personal perspective. This is when the world is changing and there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. Regardless if we stay peaceful, regardless if we stay just hopeful or bury ourselves in a daydream, the world is still gonna change. And even if we take to the streets and demand our rights, well, even that is futile from a certain perspective, because the world is changing even without it, and the old value systems are gonna change. There is no doubt about this. Irreversible. This cannot be stopped. The world, reality, even nature herself is going through a big reconfiguration, is going through a cycle of deconstruction and then reconstruction. Now, nature herself doesn't need that much deconstruction because our kind did that for her for many tens of years, so now she's reconstructing. But our civilization has to face the deconstruction because our ways are no longer compatible with Mother Nature, and this is the moment in time when we cannot outsmart her. Yes, we may have the technology and knowledge for it, but we cannot apply it because we are not acting as one, and not acting, the divergence, splitting up, serves Mother Nature because we cannot overpower her. We can only overpower her if we find the greater expression of unity, but when we do find that greater expression of unity, we will no longer seek to overpower her, but rather be in harmony with her, not submit to her, but just love her, and that love has to be mutual. And after we receive the respect, trust, and faith of our own planet, our own mother, so to speak, well, then maybe we have all the liberty to go and explore other worlds, other planets, other objects in space, in the cosmos, because we have learned the karmic lesson of respect, we have learned the karmic lesson of what it means to be responsible, diligent, what it means to take responsibility for everything, and to have the foresight and the wisdom to apply that foresight. So, in the big picture, all of this is actually leading us to our true futures. Big pivotal point is definitely going to be the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn on 21st December 2020 in the 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is opening the doors of our future and giving us the chance to actually live the new paradigm. And that also is a very important moment when our perceptions open up to a totally different reality. It is a moment when we're already beginning to see in a very palpable way how our value systems have already changed inside of us, inside our souls, and that gives us the chance to embody that change, to give it a physical expression, to make it a new custom, to make it a new rule, a new tradition that is going to govern us for the next 20 years. So basically, the tarot reading is saying is that many people have lost their dreams, their power over their futures, their foresight, and they're basically descending into the most positive expression of all this chaos. Because what do you do when you have no future anymore? Then you do your best to conjure up all your ambition, all your passion, all the power of your soul, all the power of your intellect, the Ace of Wands, and create a new one. But because the Ace of Wands is reversed, all of this is happening inside of us, and it's not going to be expressed in a very disruptive, negative, and challenging way. But that doesn't mean that after more and more people reach the same conclusion, regardless of their personal beliefs, that act of expressing it won't come into existence anytime soon. Especially that very soon the retrograde seasons are going to start. Venus retrograde, Pluto retrograde, Saturn and Jupiter retrograde. So, and of course the nodes of the moon, which govern karma, humanity's path, which it has to take as a collective, are finally entering in May into Gemini and Sagittarius. So that means our knowledge, our minds, our philosophies, our religious views, and everything that has to do with how our earthly laws and rules reflect the truth, our inner truth. Now all of that is going to undergo a massive transformation where the North Node, exalted in the sign of Gemini, being at its most powerful, most relevant representation, is going to catapult us into the future, whether we like it or not. So thank you so much for listening. Stay safe and blessed, everyone. And remember, at this moment in time, it is a much better idea to contain your anger, to contain your frustration, and just to stay safe because we haven't seen anything yet. This is not yet the moment to rebel and to act in any way. Let's just take time to reflect. Let's just allow the universe to guide us a little bit more by revealing more and more truths and by enabling the karmic forces to trigger more relevant events, which can also be very guiding. Let all of us make decisions after then. And let us also remember that this is the time, this is a big karmic test, the exam, where we have to show the universe, we have to show Mother Nature that we as a species can contain our anger, can contain our aggression, and that we take love and mutual respect very seriously, not just as individuals, but also as a species. Thank you so much. Bye for now.